Okay, well, I'm going to tell a story that I think illustrates perfectly what I've talked about in other videos about the Canadian mentality and the Canadian mindset. It's actually something that happened to me. Back in the year 2003, I had a female police officer come to my door, and she starts quizzing me out at the door about a car accident. Now, I knew nothing about this car accident. I had no idea what she was talking about. At the time, I was driving a 1984 Chev Impala. Okay. Um, this is what happened anyway. She was saying that there was a car accident in a private parking lot, that $700 had been done to the other car, and the private parking lot was actually across the street from the building where I lived. It was behind the neighboring building. It was a parking lot I never drove into because I had no business being in there. That parking in there was for the other building, and I had no reason to go in there. And if I had parked in there, I would have been taking somebody else's space. So I never did that. I mean, there'd be no reason for me to do that, and I never did. And I told her that. I said, I've never been I never driven a vehicle into that parking lot. There's never been any reason I would, you know. Well, she said that, and I asked her. I said, "How come you're asking me about this?" Well, she said, "Because your car is old and it's always parked. It's parked oftentimes in this area." And I said, "Well, what does having an old car?" Because this was in 2003, and I was driving a 1984 car. But I said, what does having an old car have to do with it? I don't understand that. And of course, it's parked in this area because this is where I live. I said, if I knew where you lived and I went up around where you live, when you were home, I would probably see your car. Because you're not going to own a car and park it on the other side of town and walk home. That doesn't make any sense. you know. So I said, yeah, my car does be here a lot. That's true, but it's because I live here. So when I'm home, you'll see my car around the area, That just makes sense. Well, anyway, she said, well, there's only $700 in damage. And if you just put $700 in my hand so that I can give it to the owner of the car, that would be good. Then there'll be no more trouble. And I said, well, there isn't going to be any trouble anyway, because I said I had nothing to do with it. And I don't care if it's $7. I didn't do the damage, and I'm not going to pay for the damage. And I said paying for the damage would be an admission of guilt, and I'm not guilty. I didn't hit that car. So I'm not paying it. And she says, well, this really isn't a police matter. And I said, well, yes, it is. You're on my doorstep in uniform, talking to me about this issue and wanting me to give you money. I said, this is a police matter. And I said, what this sounds like to me is that you're asking for a bribe. Turns out I was right. That's what it was. The police wanted me to pay them a bribe in order to be allowed to continue driving in Perth, Ontario, Canada. That's what it was. It was the Perth police that were at my door. The cop's name was Sharon Spear. That was her name, Sharon Spear. Anyway, I told her I wouldn't be paying. I didn't do the damage, and I wouldn't be paying. A few days later, well, then when she was at my door too, she says, well, can I come into your apartment and look around? And I said, no, you can't. And she said, well, why not? And I said, because I said no. I said, do you have a warrant to come in here and look around? Well, no, but I didn't think I would need that. I said, well, you would. To come in here, you'd need a warrant. Well, she said, that makes us wonder what you're doing in your apartment. And I said, you can wonder all you want, but you're not coming in without a warrant. And so anyway, a few days later, another cop by the name of Mark Massey shows up at my door at 7 in the morning. I hadn't been outside yet. I was still puttering around the apartment, getting ready to go out. He comes to my door and he says, I need to talk to you about your car. And I said, look, I've been through this already with Sharon Spear. I had nothing to do with any car accident, with any hit and run or whatever, and I'm not going to pay for damages. And I said, I'm going to close the door now. He says, no, don't do that. Just a minute. He said, I'm not talking about that. He said, your car is parked on the public street with no license plates on it, and that's illegal. And I said, it had license plates on it when I parked it there last night. I said, this is the first I'm hearing that it has no license plates on it. And he says, well, we took the license plates off it last night. And I said, oh, well, there's the answer. That's the reason there's no plates on it. I said, what did you do that for? Well, we've decided that it's not fit for the road, and we've taken the plates off it. So you're going to have to get it safety checked again and everything. And he said, and you can't drive it with no plates, but you can't leave it on the street because it's illegal. And I said, well, what am I supposed to do? Pick the car up and carry it? How am I supposed to get it out of there if I can't drive it? And he said, well, you're going to have to hire a tow truck or whatever to remove it. So anyway, I'm downstairs cleaning the junk out of my car because I figured, well, if I get it re-safetied, this car now is marked, basically, and I'm going to be harassed mercilessly. I'll just have to get another car. So anyway, I called my friend Cliff Kelford that had the scrap yard. I said, I've got a 1984 Chev Impala for you. Come and get it. Well, while I was clearing the car out, and while he was on his way to pick the car up, Mark Massey, the cop, he comes back, and he hands me an ownership paper. And I said, what's this? He said, this is your revised ownership. Now your car is registered as unfit. If you drive it on the street now, it'll be a $1,000 fine for driving an unfit motor vehicle. Anyway, I bought a 1983 Buick LeSabre to replace my 1984 Chev Impala. Got the car safetied and everything. Took the car, took the paperwork up to the Ministry of Transportation office. Put it down on the desk there in front of the lady, and I told her, I said, I'm here to register my car. Well, she looked at the paperwork, and she saw that it was a 1983 Buick LeSabre, and she gave me a look, just give me a dirty look, and she says, I am goddamn sick of all you lowlifes coming in here registering your old cars. And I looked at her, and I said, that's fine. I said, look, you don't have to like me, and you don't have to like my car, but you have to do your job. She said, I refuse to register this vehicle for you. I just refuse to do it. And so her supervisor was there. I yelled over to her supervisor, who owned the franchise there, because it's like we have franchise operations here for the motor vehicle stuff in Ontario. So I called over to her supervisor, who's an older lady, and I said, would you please tell this woman that she needs to conduct this transaction? So she come over and she went over the paperwork and looked, and she said, well, he's got everything that's required. You have to register the vehicle. It doesn't matter that you don't like it. You have to do it. And so the woman did it, but she did it under duress anyway. She was mad about it, Anyway, when I told people those stories, what I was told is, well, little wonder the police don't like you, like you talk to them, you talk back to them. You wouldn't let the officer into your apartment to look around when she asked you to, and all that, and it doesn't matter that they wanted a bribe. A police officer gave you an order, and you disobeyed her. She ordered you to give her $700, and you refused to do it. And so you are in the wrong, because that's an officer, and you do as they say. And stuff. And when I talk about how the lady in the MTO office treated me, I was told, well, little wonder the woman doesn't like you if you talk to her like that. And that's the Canadian mentality, and that's why we're in the mess we're in. That's why we have authority figures who overstep so much. If people were more like me and actually invoke their rights, There was nothing unreasonable about what I did. I shouldn't have to pay a bribe to the police to drive. I don't have to allow the police to come and search my home unless they have a warrant. Like, look, if she had showed up with a warrant, I wouldn't have interfered with her because the warrant would have given her the right to do it. So as long as she was operating within the terms of the warrant, I wouldn't have interfered with her. If she strayed outside of the warrant, well, then I'd make a point of bringing that up in court if I found myself charged with anything. If there was any error in the warrant or whatever, I'd make a point of bringing that up too to defend myself from any charges that might get laid as a result of her search. But the thing is, I don't have to volunteer to have my home searched by the police. The law in this country says I don't have to do that. And so I was polite about it. I didn't say, no, you effing so-and-so, you bitch, you're not coming in here, F you, you pig, and on like that. I didn't do that. All I said is, no, you may not. And then she started to ask me why, and I said, do you have a warrant? No. Well, without a warrant, you can't come in. This is my home. I don't have to let you in, and I'm not going to. But I mean, I did not name call, and the same with the other lady at the MTO. She called me a lowlife. I didn't call her names. I just said, hey, look, you don't have to like me. You don't have to like my car. You have to do your job. That's all. Anyway, it turned out I was right about that cop looking for a bribe because this became a practice in town. They were targeting people with older vehicles and saying either pay us $700 or you're going to have problems, and saying that it was because of an accident in a private parking lot. I wasn't the only one they did this to. I know 3 other people in town that they pulled the same stunt on. One of them actually paid the money and kept his truck. One of them already knew what had happened to me because I had told him, and he said, you're not going to do to me what you did to Tom Fournier. And when he said that, they just walked away. And one of them did lose his vehicle, just like I lost my vehicle because he refused to pay. So, I mean, there were 2 of us lost our vehicles. One walked away and one paid the bribe that I know of. Well, the guy who they walked away from was a neighbor of mine. That's how he knew the story, because he actually heard the conversation between myself and Mark Massey at my door. And the cop that pulled the plates off my car in the middle of the night, he was a fellow by the name of Richard Crow. Richard Crow, like the bird, you know. He's the fella, he had pulled my plates off my car sometime in the wee hours of the morning after I had parked it. Anyway, he's a whole other kettle of fish, he is. I could tell you all kinds of stories about him. But here's the thing. The guy who came to my door to tell me that my plates were gone, Mark Massey, a few years later, he hauled his ex-wife out of their former home. She was still in the home. And he beat the crap out of her on the front lawn, well, in uniform, driving a patrol car over to the house, and in uniform beat her up on the front lawn in plain view of all the neighbors. And he did this because she had successfully gotten a judgment against him where he had to pay her more support. And he was mad because he had to pay her more money. So he beat her up on the front lawn. And the police didn't want to charge him, but they were forced to because all the neighbors saw it, and they were all outraged, and they were all threatening that they were going to raise bloody hell over it unless he was charged. In the end, it didn't amount to much. He did get convicted, but his punishment was very minor, and he's still a police officer. Anyway, and see, that this is what happens in Canada. But here's the thing. It turns out it was a bribe scheme that they were running, that the police were running back in 2003 in my hometown. The Perth Police have since been disbanded, and now the Ontario Provincial Police patrol Perth. But most of the same officers that I had dealings with the Perth Police, they just went over to the OPP. and they got huge payouts for doing it. They got a huge payout from the town when they shut the police department down. And of course, they have more money and more power as members of the OPP. So, that's how it goes. But here's the thing, anyway. What really gets to me is like, look, I expect police to be corrupt. That doesn't surprise me. It surprises me when they're not. And there have been a few times I've had dealings with police who were decent and weren't corrupt. Not every cop is a crook or a bully or whatever. I'd say the majority of them are, but I wouldn't say every single one is. I have known a few who were decent people. But the thing is, when they are corrupt, that doesn't surprise me. The thing that surprises me, well, actually, it doesn't surprise me, but it bothers me. I'm not really bothered by the police being corrupt because I figure, oh, well, that's just how it is. But what bothers me is when citizens uphold them in the corruption. Or like the lady at the MTO, and I'm told, well, you were in the wrong for talking to her that way. Well, look, she called me a lowlife. I didn't call her any names. There was nothing wrong with what I said. What I said was, you don't have to like me, which is true, she doesn't. And really, I don't care if she likes me anyway, but even if I did care if she liked me, she's under no obligation to like me. If she thinks I'm a lowlife, she's entitled to think that. I uphold her in her right to think that I'm a lowlife. Also, she doesn't have to like my car. She can think my car's a piece of crap. That's fine. I'll uphold her in that as well. But she has to do her job. And that's what I said. I said, you don't have to like me. You don't have to like my car. You have to do your job. Doesn't matter how you feel about me or my car. You have to do your job. And, and her supervisor did back me up on that. Her supervisor looked at all my paperwork and confirmed that I had done everything properly, that I was operating within the law, and that she had to do the job. She had to conduct the transaction even though she didn't want to, even though she found it distasteful to have to do that. So, yeah, look, I'm not telling her she has to like registering my car. I'm just saying you have to do it because it's your job. That's all. If I was working in a grocery store as a cashier, and some overweight person came through my cash with a cartload of junk food, I could be thinking all kinds of things. I could be running the chips across the scanner and thinking, boy, these are the last things you need, But you know what? It's none of my business. That person's entitled to shop and buy whatever they want to buy and to eat whatever they want to eat, and it's none of my business. I might have an opinion. You can't help but to have an opinion. We all think things whether we want to or not. But I wouldn't be allowed to say, you know what? I disapprove of this purchase and I refuse to conduct this transaction. I wouldn't be allowed to do that, nor should I be. It doesn't matter what my personal opinion is. And that's the thing anyway. But it's amazing how Canadians will do that. How they'll say, no, you were in the wrong because you disrespected that lady by making her do her job. Or you were in the wrong because you disobeyed the officer by refusing to pay a bribe. For one thing, the police officer committed a criminal offense by asking me for a bribe, because in Canada, at least, there's a law against soliciting bribes. Public officials are not legally allowed to ask for bribes. There's also a law against paying bribes. If I had paid her the bribe, then I would be committing a criminal offense by paying her. Because there's laws in Canada too against paying bribes. So basically, in that situation, the police officer was the criminal, and I was not. So, what I did within the law. I had not only a right to say, no, I won't pay a bribe, I was actually legally obligated to say, no, I won't pay a bribe. So, that's basically it anyway, but I do find in Canada there's a lot of that. Just, well, you know what, you should just give in. Like, if you don't give in, you're a criminal, you're a troublemaker, you're choosing trouble, you're asking for trouble, and all the rest of it. And it's like, here we are now in a situation where we've got all kinds of censorship and all kinds of stuff. People are being thrown into jail for stupid stuff. They're actually, in some cases, people are serving more time in Canada for stupid stuff, just for disagreeing, than people who have done real harm. People who have committed violent crimes without any legitimate reason. People who have committed sexual crimes, and so on. I mean, you could, a man could commit a rape or molest a child or something and be in less trouble now than he'd be in for not using the pronouns of a transgender person that they choose, for not calling a 250-pound man with a full beard a woman if he says he wishes to be called a woman. That's where we're at. It's bizarre. Anyway, that's another rant from me on a rainy day where I can't really do much but sit here and ponder things and think about how we got into the situation we're in. And that's how we got here.